This was a reasonably high-end manufacturer of office furniture and kitchen cabinets. And an opportunity presented itself for a very significant order to be sold into Hong Kong for the Chinese market. It was a massive opportunity, but it was something they had never done before. The final outcome on this one was they sold them 15,000 kitchens over a period of time, which was a significant win for them, and it opened up an export market they'd never been involved in before. And that for them was a major win. It also boosted morale. At the time, the office furniture industry was fairly sluggish, and all of a sudden there was an awful lot of work going through, which meant they were actually now running a night shift to get the kitchen cabinets going through. So it really helped the business enormously and kept the workforce really excited about the stuff that they were doing. There were a number of issues we had to look at. There was a cultural issue that the board of directors had never done any international business at all, and certainly never even contemplated China. To some extent, the project landed on their lap just through a series of things that happened. The right person ended up talking to them and said, "You make kitchen cabinets, could you do this?" We had to take them through a process of pitching. They had been completely used to selling through a network of dealers who understood what they were doing, and all they were really doing was providing them with product and some backup marketing material, and off they went and sold it. This was now them actually directly selling to the end customer who didn't speak their language and had an entirely different structure of doing things. So we had to completely re-educate the management team and the board of directors on how they were going to do this, as well as prepare them for the various interactions that would take place with the Hong Kong agent and ultimately then the Chinese client who would visit the factory. There were a number of times during the process where things got a bit interesting. The factory visit was probably the most nerve-wracking. We had set this up over a 3-month period. A lot of the negotiations had been going on. At that time, it was done through fax. We didn't have the opportunity to do phone calls and things like that quite easily. But we'd arranged for a factory visit, and what we'd suggested in my conversations with the agent was that culturally, it's expected that you give gifts to a Chinese gift. They will certainly bring gifts for you, and you will give them to them. And I'd not really thought about it and said, look, you'll need to create some gifts. It'd be great if there was something to do with the company and everything else. And I arrived about half an hour before the Chinese delegation were about to arrive, and I walked in, whereupon the managing director came up to me and said, "Look at these, it's fantastic," and handed me a clock that they'd made using the materials from the kitchen with a clock face on it. I hadn't even thought about it, but I had to explain to him, you never ever give a clock as a present to someone who's Chinese. It has very negative connotations. And very, very quickly, we're now 15 minutes before they're arriving, a whole load of clocks have been made for the entire delegation, all of which have to be put in a cupboard out of the way, and we very quickly had to find alternative gifts, which thankfully we found a whole lot of golfing umbrellas and some mugs. So that was a bit interesting. The cultural difficulties with the Chinese and an upper middle-aged UK resident who'd built the business up were difficult on occasions. What he thought was funny as a humorous aside, which is how he'd built the business, were not at all appropriate. So we had to put an entirely different structure in place on how they communicated, how they did things, how we worked with them to make sure that everything we did fitted the sensibilities of a Chinese audience. And at the end of the day, we certainly got a few things wrong, but thankfully not significantly badly wrong that it impacted the final deal. But it was a very interesting experience to go through.